More turmoil in Pakistan tonight. Even as the government appears on the verge of collapse, today a top official was assassinated in broad daylight in an Islamabad market. And now one of the leading voices in Pakistan says U.S. policy in that country is dead wrong. What's more, he says the war in Afghanistan is long since lost.
Imran Khan is a national hero in Pakistan. At one time, he led its cricket team. He's also a prominent politician, and he joins us now from Islamabad. Welcome, Mr. Khan.
Thank you.
All right. This was the highest profile politician killed in Pakistan since the assassination of former Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto 3 years ago. Tell us what this assassination means.
Well, it's spread a feeling of panic in Pakistan, because if the governor of a province is not safe, and the biggest province in Pakistan, then who is safe? And it seems as if the government is incapable of protecting the people if it can't protect its governor. So there is a sort of feeling of demoralization, a feeling of fear amongst a lot of politicians.
Well, does this mean that that extremists have become more mainstream, the fact that he was so vulnerable?
No, what it has meant is that since 2004, when Pakistan started military operations in Pakistan's tribal areas, extremism has grown in Pakistan. The more military operations we have had, the more militants have grown. And unfortunately, this war on terror has created more radicalization in our society. So when people feel that this is a war against Islam, which is the general perception amongst the masses, then there are a lot of people willing to defend the religion.
Mr. Khan, this is Elliot Spitzer. When you talk about the war on terror, are you talking about the war on terror that is being waged by the Pakistani government or by the U.S. government in conjunction with the Pakistani government?
Well, Pakistan Army is considered as a proxy army of the U.S. It is on the behest of U.S. that Pakistan Army went into Pakistan's tribal areas. And we had no suicide bombings in Pakistan. We had sectarian militants in Pakistan, but they were controlled by our establishment. Right now, the army is being attacked. More Pakistani soldiers have been killed than the US soldiers killed in Afghanistan and Iraq put together. How many civilians we have killed, we have no accurate account. But the feeling that Pakistan is fighting someone else's war, bombing its own people, and at the same time we have drone attacks. And in the last year, there have been record amount of drone attacks. So all this has radicalized the young people, especially the Pashtun. Remember, the people who are being killed on both sides of the border in Afghanistan and Pakistan are the Pashtuns. And so that's where the major radicalization has taken place.
So if I understand you properly, Mr. Khan, what you are suggesting is that the U.S. policies, certainly as they are having an impact within Pakistan, are being counterproductive, because what you're saying is that the U.S. policies are actually generating the outbreak, and we are strengthening the extremist forces within Pakistan.
Absolutely, they're counterproductive. If they were productive, you should have seen a decline in terrorism. There should have been less terrorists. There should have been less groups. At the moment, 140,000 Pakistani soldiers are stuck in our tribal areas. And there's a military operation. The moment they come back, the militants come back. There is, if anything, things are getting worse.
What would you have the U.S. do? What would be an appropriate policy from your point of view?
Well, for a start, when has aerial bombardment been a good way of fighting terrorists? And remember, the militants are living in villages with civilians. This is not an army being fought. It's guerrillas who are hiding with the civilians. Now, the more collateral damage done, all that it does, it benefits the militants. In U.S. and Afghanistan, each year the military actions have gone up. The more U.S. operations have increased, forces have increased. But is this producing results? Are the people of Afghanistan or the people in Pakistan's tribal area, are they with the US or are they with the militants? Fighting terrorism is to win the hearts and minds of people. If you lose the hearts and minds war, you've lost the war. If the terrorists are perceived as terrorists by the people from who they are operating from, then you're winning the war. If they are perceived as freedom fighters, you're losing the war. And I'm afraid this policy of one-dimensional policy of bombardment, drone attacks, military operations, they are being counterproductive. What should be done is that military operations should be part of a political settlement. There should be dialogue. At the same time, military operation should only aid that political settlement. At the moment, we are just seeing a one-dimensional military policy, and it's not succeeding. In fact, Pakistan is imploding. This country is going down. I mean, this country has taken more casualties. We have had over 500 bomb blasts the previous year. Last year, almost the same amount. Record amount of suicide attacks. There are about $40–50 billion the economy has suffered. And the increased radicalization of our society, as you saw this assassination today of the governor. So, I mean, things are just getting worse for this country. And I think that there needs to be a change of strategy. This is not a successful strategy.
Well, Mr. Khan, what would a successful strategy look like?
For me, it should be talking to all the stakeholders. There should be an immediate ceasefire. You can't have dialogue and at the same time military action. Unfortunately, this policy is dictated by the security personnel, by the generals. It's not a civilian-backed or political-backed policy in Afghanistan. The key issue is Afghanistan. If you have peace in Afghanistan, if you can have a ceasefire, get people around the table, talk about when there's an exit strategy, maybe have Muslim forces, peacekeeping forces, to have a government of consensus, it is the only way to go about in Afghanistan. The current policy could just go on and on.
If the United States wants to have that discussion, those negotiations with the Taliban, and General Petraeus himself has said that that is the right thing to do, and I think there's almost universal agreement on that point. Can you begin those negotiations if you are at the same time withdrawing militarily? If you show that weakness, what is the incentive then for the negotiation?
But first of all, what is General Petraeus doing? What he's trying to do is to kill as many Taliban as possible. What he calls degrading the Taliban means basically defeating them. I don't know what degrading means. It means defeating them, and then he hopes that they will come onto the negotiating table. But look at the other side. What if he doesn't succeed? What if the Taliban don't lose? And for them to win is not to lose. All they have to do is not confront the US forces in some open battle, which they are not going to do. So what happens? If this goes on for 2–3 years, eventually there will be enough pressure for the US to leave. My worry is that the longer this goes on, the more killing done, we will end up having a far more radical setup in Afghanistan than the one the US replaced in 2001. Because this more killing is creating more radicalization. And it's clearly not working because Taliban are not, the support for Taliban is increasing. And the majority of Afghan population today wants talks with Taliban. So in my opinion, the best way to go about it is to have a ceasefire, have negotiations. And if the Taliban say that, okay, look, if the US leaves and then only we will talk, you could have a peacekeeping force from Muslim countries. But there has to be an alternative. This is not going to work. Anyone who knows the history of Afghanistan knows that there's going to be a lot of killing, and in the end, the result will not be any different. You will still have to talk to the Taliban in the end.
All right, Imran Khan, thank you so much for being with us. Up ahead,